How are you all doing? I'm going to move this table back so I can see all of you a little bit better. Thank you, Diane, for having me out here today. I haven't been back to the campus in quite some time. I had a chance today to walk around and look at all the amazing research that you all are doing. It's really impressive, and it reminds me of when I was an undergrad doing research for UCLEADS, and I'm very excited for all of you. Today, I want to share a story that is very personal for me. This is probably the most vulnerable I've been in front of a crowd before telling a story. I want to share my journey overcoming the imposter syndrome. If you take nothing else away from this talk, I want you to remember that differences don't make you an imposter. Differences make you an asset. When I was in my fourth year as a graduate student here at UC Santa Cruz in the astrophysics department, I was asked to serve on the graduate admissions committee. It was a big honor. Every year, one student from the department was selected and asked to serve on the committee to determine who would come into the graduate program the following year. And they picked me. So of course, I immediately said yes before they could realize the poor choice they had made. After all, what did I know about what it would take to be a successful graduate student? I wasn't even sure how I had gotten into the department. The review process was a lot like what you might expect. We sat in a small, dark room with the curtains drawn, with our caffeinated beverages, looking at scores projected onto the screen, reviewing applications one by one. After reviewing a number of these applications, something became very clear. There was a trend. Almost all of the personal statements started off pretty much the same. Ever since I was a kid, I knew when I grew up I wanted to be an astronomer. I thought back to when I was a kid, and my mom asking me, what did I want to be when I grew up? At the time, the answer seemed quite obvious. I wanted to be President of the United States. Or a runway supermodel. Or hey, maybe even both. I mean, I felt like I was qualified to do either job. Of course, my mom was very pleased with my career ambition. She herself was struggling through an engineering program at UC Berkeley. This is back in the 80s. At the time that I made this declaration, I wasn't aware of the glass ceiling in America, or of the 5'8" height requirement for runway supermodels. I mean, I wasn't even 4 feet tall yet. I just knew that those both sounded like really awesome jobs, and I could be whatever I wanted to be when I grew up. It took me another 30 plus years to feel that way again about myself and my profession. Granted, I didn't become President of the United States or a runway supermodel. I'm only 5'7", I'm too short. But I did manage to land myself in a pretty unique job that requires a very specific set of skills. And for a long time, I didn't think I was qualified to do that job. I felt like an imposter. Let me ask you all, how many of you in here at some point along your journey has felt like an imposter? Go ahead and raise your hand. I can tell you that for me, it was many times. And like many people that suffer from the imposter syndrome will tell you, I got lucky. Let's stop on that statement for a second. I got lucky. I had a roadmap of moments in my life where I had gotten lucky. Getting into UC Berkeley, I got lucky. Passing my exams, I got lucky. Finding a research project, I got lucky. Getting into graduate school, I got lucky. All this luck, and somehow, even to this day, whenever I play the lotto, I never seem to win. Not even a scratcher. I always have somebody else scratch them off for me. The point is, I was giving luck all of the credit and none to myself. They say luck is where opportunity meets preparation. So what were all these opportunities that I was privy to? I grew up in Oakland, California in the 1970s. My mother, Frances, was one of 13 children from a Catholic military family, 10 girls, 3 boys. My father, Percy, was an immigrant from Peru. He was the second youngest of 8 children and the only one to come to the United States. They met, the magic happened, and I was created. I was to become the oldest of 11 siblings from 2 blended families. A mixed-race child growing up in the Bay Area. I really wasn't quite sure where I'd fit in. Why am I telling you all of this? I think it's important to understand where our differences come from, what shapes our view of the world, where our gifts come from. I knew that I felt different. I didn't feel like I belonged. I spent my childhood running around the streets of Oakland, attending Oakland public schools. My high school was Oakland Technical High. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Oakland Tech. It's actually a pretty good school now. But back in the 90s, when I went to Oakland Tech, about a third of its students didn't graduate. My 2 best friends were both pregnant before their senior year of high school and dropped out. Needless to say, when I graduated, I wasn't really prepared for college. I got a job at a call center. I worked a couple dead-end jobs. I didn't really have a direction. And then one day, perhaps out of boredom or maybe curiosity, or honestly probably because my boyfriend was going, I enrolled at Laney Community College, and I started taking night classes. I didn't really have a direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had forgotten all about being president of the United States or a runaway supermodel. I started taking English classes and math classes. I gave up hanging out with my friends, pulled some all-nighters. I was kind of good at it. And then I discovered something. I was good at math. Hey, I know. People that are good at math, they become accountants. Now I had something that I could do, something that I could be. Never mind the fact that I had 0 interest in being an accountant. And then, I got lucky. One day on my community college campus, some recruiters from UC Berkeley showed up, and they told us that we could apply for a transfer to one of the UCs. So the next day I went to my counselor's office to find out what I needed to do to be eligible for a transfer. Are there transfer students in here? Yeah. They said that there were certain classes that I needed to take. So I got the list, and one of the requirements was a science class. I chose observational astronomy. I had always been fascinated by the stars. When I was a little kid, I had the star map hanging over my bed. And I used to stare up at it and look at all the constellations and the mythical creatures. And I was kind of obsessed with Clash of the Titans. They had really good special effects back then, okay? So one of the requirements for my class was that I would observe the stars and I would draw the constellations on my star map. So I would go up to Lawrence Hall of Science and I would lay out by the fountain and I would look up at the heavens and make my little notations on the star map. One Friday, I went up to Lawrence Hall of Science and it was really crowded. Turns out, on Friday nights, they have amateur astronomy night. And the astronomers in the community would come, set up their telescopes, and invite the public to come view it. telescopes and they were looking through them. I wasn't very excited. I was like, I know what a star looks like through a telescope. A bright dot, magnified, is just a magnified bright dot. But I went over and looked anyway. And what I saw changed my life. It was Saturn. And it looked absolutely nothing like this. It looked like this. And I'll be honest, that was one of the most vulnerable moments in my life. Now don't get me wrong, I had seen images of Saturn before, images way better than this one. But that's just it, they were pictures, they were images. This wasn't an image, this was Saturn. The direction of my life changed that night. I wanted to know more about the universe, about space. I no longer wanted to be President of the United States or a runway supermodel. No, I wanted to be Albert Einstein. I went to campus and talked to the counselor about what I needed to do to transfer to an astrophysics program at one of the UCs. Apparently, you need to have taken physics classes for that. I was trying to be an accountant. But I decided that I was going to try my best. So I enrolled in a summer physics class, and I applied for a transfer, knowing that I was coming up short. 2 physics classes short. I applied to UC Berkeley, my number one choice. I kind of put all my eggs in one basket. And they accepted me. I know, I was shocked. I felt more like an imposter than ever. I knew when I got to UC Berkeley that I would have to play catch up, right? I was behind on my classes. One of the first classes that I enrolled in was Astronomy 7A. It was kind of required. It was an introduction to astrophysics. And I was really excited. I was learning about special relativity and general relativity. I was well on my way to becoming Albert Einstein. When the first exam was announced, I knew it would be a challenge. I was a transfer student. But I decided that I was going to go to a coffee shop, bunker down, and study harder than I ever studied before. And that's what I did. I studied. And when exam day came, I was ready. And I took that exam and I felt really confident. That was until I got my exam back. I had failed. My very first exam at UC Berkeley, and I failed it. You can imagine what I thought in that moment, that I was in over my head, that I couldn't do it, that maybe I should just give up. But I had worked so hard to be there that wasn't an option. So I did what I'm sure any student in my situation would do. Not cry, thought about it. I went to my professor and I asked him for advice. I told him that I was a transfer student, that this was my major, that this was my first exam, that I had studied really hard, harder than I ever studied before, and I had failed it. And do you know the advice he gave me? He told me, not everyone is meant to be an astronomer. There are other jobs in astronomy. You could write grants or clean telescopes. Yeah. And in that moment, I thought what I'm sure every one of you has thought somewhere along your journey. You guys know what I'm going to say? I'll show him. And I did. I got a B+ on my next exam. Passed the class. My time at UC Berkeley was pretty amazing. Sorry about that. Somehow. There we go. UC Berkeley was pretty amazing. At the time, I didn't really realize that I was only one of a handful of women and only one of a handful of Latinos in the physics department. I mean, of course, we were all friends. We just never talked about it. We didn't talk about how there weren't any women professors, or Latino professors, or black professors, or just professors who didn't look like one another. No, we didn't talk about it. We just felt lucky to be there. Just wanted to blend in. We didn't want to stick out with our different attitudes or different personalities or different ways of thinking. I spent another 15 years just trying to fit in. The top picture, my friend Deborah, we took a physics circuits class. We were the only 2 women in the class. And for our final project, we built the clapper. Now, most of you are probably too young to remember the clapper, but for those of you that were alive in the 80s, do you remember that commercial? Clap off, clap off, clap on, clap off, the clapper, and the lights would flicker on and off? We made one of those, and it sucked. You have to watch the oscilloscope very closely, and you have to clap at just the right time with just the right amount of volume. Meanwhile, our classmates were making things like Jesus action figures with their hand extended, levitating iron balls. You can imagine how out of place we felt. We didn't feel like we belonged. We managed to pass the class, but we kind of felt like the professor did us a favor. And I felt that way often. You see, at this point, I was just trying to finish my bachelor's. I had forgotten all about being Albert Einstein. I was working nights and weekends at a local pub, going to school during the day. I just wanted to finish my degree and do whatever one does with a bachelor's in astrophysics. Maybe become a project manager. But one day, that all changed with free pizza. My friend Kevin, in the bottom right of the photo, asked me one day if I wanted free pizza. Yeah. Who doesn't want free pizza? Apparently, there was a UC Leads event and they had free pizza. I didn't know what UC Leads was, but if there was pizza, I was going. So basically, a pepperoni slice became the reason I got a PhD in astrophysics. Okay, maybe it was a little bit more than a pepperoni slice. Maybe a lot more. I think you all know what I'm talking about. UC Leads changed my life. They taught me about graduate school, what it was, how to apply. Prior to UC Leads, I didn't know what graduate school was. I thought it had something to do with my TAs that were overworked and underpaid, but that was all I knew. You see, my mom and dad were the only 2 out of their combined 21 siblings to get bachelor's degrees. And that was a really big deal. My dad didn't want me to go to graduate school. He told me it would be a waste of time and money, and I should just get a job. You see, perhaps like many of you, I wasn't exposed to PhDs growing up beyond Albert Einstein and the fraternity of professors that were teaching my classes at Berkeley. Imagine how surprised I was when I got to graduate school and discovered that a lot of my classmates came from a long line of PhDs. Hi, I'm Kirsten. I'm the imposter. Nice to meet you. Okay. But this isn't about my graduate school experience, right? This is about UC Leads. UC Leads helped me with the steps that I needed for graduate school. Step 1, free pizza. Step 2, a research project. Okay. This was exciting. I wanted to do research. So I applied for an REU. You guys still have those? Yeah. And I got turned down for an REU. Oh boy, here's another moment where I felt like an imposter, where I felt like I wasn't good enough. So what did I do? I went back to a moment of my life, from my previous life, my pre-academic life, to when I worked in that call center. Now, working in a call center is not very exciting. It's actually pretty redundant, and you get rejected a lot. But I learned something very important there, the numbers game. I learned about persistence and not giving up, and I learned about mass mailings. So I went home, and I drafted an email, and I sent it to everyone. Everyone. I went online, I got the list of professors at UC Berkeley, I looked at their research, and I emailed every single professor. And most of them ignored me, except for, well, a couple didn't, but one important one, George Smoot. George Smoot, he's the old guy right there. George Smoot brought me on to do research. He already had a crew of undergrads and grad students and postdocs and staff members. Now, this picture was taken before he won the Nobel Prize in Physics, and before he won $1 million on Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? I'm not sure which one was harder. Only 2 people have won on the TV show. A lot of people won Nobel Prizes, right? And there was something else remarkable about him, about his group. Can you see it in this photo? He had a lot of women working for him. And not just women, but brown women too. He never said anything about it. There were no pats on the back. It just was how it was. And for the first time, I felt like I fit in. I felt like I could be myself. I saw women that were further along in their careers, that were graduate students and postdocs and staff members. This was amazing. And it wasn't perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. One of the postdocs, she was frustrated because she had been trying to become a staff member and hadn't, and thought it was because she was a woman. One of the graduate students was suffering from mental illness and couldn't get the help she needed from the institution. Now, it wasn't perfect, but it gave me hope. Okay, so to recount. Step 1, free pizza. Step 2, research project. Brings me to step 3, applying to graduate school. I'm getting over a hole. UCLEADS helped me with the graduate school application process. I knew nothing. They were my mentor. They gave me a toolbox with folders and envelopes and stamps. They gave me instructions. They went over with me how to do statements of purpose, how to do personal statements, how to ask for letters of recommendation, how to get my transcripts. They talked to me about the GRE. I had to take the physics GRE. Ooh, that's a story. The morning of the physics GRE. Whew. That was a rough one. To talk about this, I have to back up to letters of recommendation. This is something I haven't shared with a crowd before. I'm sure all of you have been advised to ask your letter writers for a good letter of recommendation. Is that correct? Yeah, that's good advice. You should do that. I did that. When it came time to choose my letter writers, I chose very carefully. Professor George Smoot, I had been doing research for him. Professor Alex Filipenko, I I was doing research for him as well. Sorry, one of his classes. Trying to do research for him. And he encouraged me to go to graduate school. And there was a third professor. I had taken an astronomy coding class from him. It was really hard. I had worked all night, many nights. I had gotten an A+ in this class, the only A+ I ever got in my life. I got it at UC Berkeley. So I went to these three professors and I asked them if they would write me a good letter of recommendation. And they said yes. Good, right? Wrong. Fast forward to the morning of my physics GRE. You see, the third professor that I had asked for a letter of recommendation, he didn't really like me. I was kind of bold and outspoken. I knew he didn't like me, but I had gotten an A+ in his class. He was head of graduate admissions in the astrophysics department. He encouraged us to ask for letters from our professors. I had given him the folder with my personal statement, my research statement, my transcripts. I had the envelopes addressed with the stamps. I had called him and emailed him, and he hadn't returned any of my correspondence. So I figured he wasn't writing me a letter. And I went and found another professor who would. So the morning of my physics GRE, I'm getting my breakfast and getting my coffee, and I had roommates, and they would put your meal next to the microwave. Do they still do that? Do roommates still put your meal next to the microwave? And there was a manila envelope addressed to me, and it was from this professor's office. And I was shocked. I hadn't heard from him. And most of the deadlines had passed for my letters. So I opened it, and I opened one of the letters, and I will never forget what it said. He rated me below average in everything. And at the very end, he said, I cannot unequivocally recommend Kirsten for a graduate program. Yeah, I know. And I had to go take my physics GRE. Right then, right there. I was in no frame of mind. I got in my car, I drove to the testing center, I took the 3-hour exam, I answered less than half the questions. I had to take it because I had to meet my deadlines for applications. And many of the schools that I applied to got this letter. And I got it. I got into my #1 pick, UC Santa Cruz. I got into schools that got his letter. The important thing to take away from this is relationships are important. You need to build those and cultivate those. The other thing is, what people think about you isn't always true. I was very successful in graduate school, and I've been very successful beyond. If it were up to him, I wouldn't be standing in front of you guys today sharing my story. I felt like he was trying to ruin me just because he didn't like me. So I have a tip for you. When choosing your letter writers, ask them what schools they think you should apply to. This will reveal a lot about what they think about you. If they list a bunch of Ivy League schools, that's who you want to have write your letter. If they list a bunch of Tier 3 schools, you might want to pass. So how did I get into my #1 pick with a bad letter of recommendation and not the greatest physics GRE scores? When I got to my department, I asked my professor that. And he told me it was because I really wanted to be there. You see, I did everything you should never do in dating. I called the department, I sent them emails, I asked if I could come visit, I told them they were my #1 pick. that I only wanted to be with them. And it worked. Of course, now I felt more like an imposter than ever. It didn't matter that half of the department was women of color too. I wondered if I had gotten in on my own merit, or if it was because of who I knew, or because I was a woman of color. I went back to that moment when I was on the graduate admissions committee. I remember that there were very few non-traditional candidates, and how the department tried to bend to make room for them in ways that they would not bend for the more traditional candidates. I saw that there was money in the form of fellowships available for those students. I had one of those fellowships. I started comparing myself to the more traditional student, my GRE scores, my grades, and I concluded that I was below the bar. I had a crisis moment. I wanted to go to my professor and ask him if I was a charity case, if I didn't really belong there and they just let me in because I came with money, or because they felt like they had to. I didn't want to ask him, but I did. I slipped into his office and asked him if I was really supposed to be there. Of course, he reassured me. He said, yes, the department wanted me with or without money, that they wanted me because I belong there. But I didn't believe him. You see, it's very common for people with the imposter syndrome not to see how much they've overcome. I had gotten this far in a system that wasn't designed for me. I only saw how far I had to go. Even after publishing 2 papers and getting a PhD in astrophysics, I still didn't feel like I was worthy. I went into the job market, applying for postdoc positions, not feeling like I was good enough. I got 2 postdoc offers, and I felt like they made a mistake. That was how I had framed the story in my head. But you see, there was another story that was also true. A story of perseverance. A story about a student that had come up in a system not traditionally designed for her, who had made it through a PhD program, some of her classmates had dropped out, who had managed to get not 1 but 2 postdoc offers when a lot of her classmates got 0. You see, depending on how I chose to tell that story, it was either a story of inadequacy or a story of success. The 2 offers I got, one was at the National Optical Astronomy Observatory, pretty much doing the same work I did for my thesis, looking at satellite galaxies of Andromeda. And I got an offer at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, working on asteroids. I chose the position at Lawrence Livermore Lab because of location and salary and career possibilities. I was their first postdoc working on asteroid hazard mitigation. I knew nothing about asteroids, and I knew nothing about mitigation. My project focused on how would you deflect an asteroid that's on a collision course with Earth using a nuclear device. It was uncharted territory and a great opportunity for growth and career development. But whenever you do something new, there are going to be failures. And me, had a lot. We started this project off with problems that were too complicated. Always start with the simplest problem. We tried to compare across 5 different codes. None of them agreed, not one. We didn't have a direction. It was bumpy, and I was not excelling. And then something very fortunate happened. One day, one of the senior scientists came into my office and he told me that I was not doing well. I listened. It's done, and I thanked him. And after he left, I went to my car and I called my best friend and I started to cry. And she gave me some of the best advice of my life. She told me, you go ahead and be devastated tonight. And tomorrow, when you get up, you know what you need to do. And that's what I did. I went home, I cried, I ate ice cream, and the next morning, I got up and I made a plan. I published 2 papers in the next 2 months. My postdoc advisor said that I finished stronger than any of his other postdocs, and when I applied for a staff position, they immediately hired me. The point is, you can turn things around at any point. You know what you need to do. You can fix it. Working at Lawrence Livermore Lab has been great. I get to work on issues pertaining to national security. One of those projects was working on a technology to several oil pipelines in case of another emergency like Deepwater Horizon disaster. This was a disaster in 2010 in the Gulf of Mexico, where an oil rig caught fire, killing 11 people and spilling 4 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. It's the biggest natural disaster in U.S. history. And I got to work on it. Well, not on it, but kind of. I had a project to simulate and then, through an experiment, test a linear shape charge. A linear shape charge is essentially a pipe that's been cut in half the long way. You put high explosives on the back end, detonate it, it inverts the pipe and creates a blade of metal that can slice through things like oil pipelines. I had a very short deadline. I had 3 months for 3 experiments that cost a lot of money. I was new. I was in over my head. And I nailed it. I nailed it. It was the first time, thank you. It was the first time where I didn't think it was luck. I thought it was me. I did it. You know, it took me a couple years for that imposter syndrome to start to fade. It didn't happen all at once. And it wasn't that I suddenly felt like I fit in. I still felt different. It was just that I started to realize that my differences were an asset. I started to realize it wasn't luck. I'm running out of time, so I want to get to this last story. One of the moments where I really began to appreciate how my different way of thinking and my different way of being was when I was asked to serve on a think tank to determine ways that we could covertly corrode metal. And I was feeling extra that day. I was the only woman in the room, and I wanted to be a little bit of a diva. So I suggested something crazy. I was like, hey, what about bird poop? You can imagine the look on my manager's face. I remember he was sitting there, and he turned his head, and he was like... But something amazing happened in that moment. My 10 Sigma suggestion opened the door for other people to share their crazy ideas. People just started pouring them out, and we were innovating before you knew it. Now, you would think that me making this crazy suggestion would have gotten me barred from all the other think tanks, but it didn't. They started asking me to serve on those committees more frequently. And I started coming up with other crazy ideas, and some of them were actually really good. I wanted to share all this with you because There's not a certain way that it's supposed to look. We're all very different, and those differences are really valuable. I spent a lot of my career going through ups and downs, feeling like an imposter. And it turns out my differences were one of my greatest assets. That and my determination to never give up. I could have stood up in front of you today and told you about all my great successes, and I have a lot of them. I've done TED-style talks, I've served on committees, I've gone to Washington, D.C., I had work that I did that went up to the White House. But I wanted you to know that for every success story, there's a backstory, and it's not always pretty. That little girl that wanted to be a presidential runway model, she became an astrophysicist. She's not an imposter, and neither are any of you. Thank you.